The Question Evolution campaign on August 28th put up on their blog 13 recent grim events for Darwinism that should give every Darwinist nightmares. Well, that intrigued me. I enjoyed the 15 questions for evolutionists that Creation Ministries International asked some time ago. The 15 questions were ridiculous and were easily answered by a group of YouTubers, and I'll leave a link below to the wonderful compilation video debunking them. I've thought of answering the 15 questions myself for my own reasons, and I think I'll do so in the future. But for now, I wanted to do a run-through of these 13 grim events to see how grim they really are. The first grim event says, the best evidence points to global atheism and agnosticism shrinking in the world, while global Christianity and creationism is seeing significant growth. Theologically liberal churches are shrinking, while many theologically conservative churches are growing. Now, about their best evidence. On this website, they encourage readers to go to their collection of key articles that serve to document these 13 grim events. I went and looked at these key articles. They're listed as Global Decline of Atheism and Rise of Global Creationism. Now, some of these sources I will talk about as I go through the 13 grims, but I want to look at a few of them first just to give you an idea. Okay, under creationism growing in France, the French religious website French Windows reported, evangelical churches are fast-growing movement in France, mostly related to the Francophone world, according to the La Nouvelle France Protestant 2011 book. There is around 40 million French-speaking Protestants in the world. They are often poor and have a hard time finding proper worship places. Okay, there's no evidence whatsoever of a growing evangelical movement in France. No data, no studies. What they do say is there are around 40 million French-speaking Protestants in the world. No mention of how many in France or how their numbers were determined. They then link to a Global Post article, Evangelicals Accuse French Officials of Discrimination. Well, I went there too. This article is about a group of 200 Haitians that said that the people in a nearby town forced them to leave. One of the members said, the mayor and the neighbors never stopped harassing us. They wanted us to stop playing music, so we did. But it wasn't enough. They asked us to stop singing, and that was simply unacceptable to us. The church was taken to court several times for noise nuisance. Another member said this, what noise? We had stopped playing our instruments. We disturbed the neighborhood because we are colored people. That was our feeling. The town, of course, denies that racism was involved, but look at this. They were singing and playing musical instruments loudly. I have no idea if it was amplified, but you can see that there is a case for disturbance. I also have no idea what time on Sunday morning they had services, but I'll bet the other residents of the town were used to a nice, quiet Sunday morning. It also looks like the church didn't want to be very accommodating. Nevertheless, this is hardly a good source and doesn't prove anything. Going up from there, there's a section titled Evidence for Biblical Christianity and Creationism, in which 3 of the 4 choices are about evidence for Christianity. This has nothing to do with their supposition that creationism and conservative Christianity are growing. Again, useless. The 4th evidence against evolutionary belief and evidence for biblical creationism. The key articles there are Why Did Jesus Die? Genesis, missing piece of the puzzle. The evolution trains are coming in the wrong direction. How the claimed mechanism for evolution does the wrong thing. It's not science. Is it valid to categorize evolution as science and creation as non-science? 15 questions for evolutionists. Well, I kind of talked about those already. First 2 are irrelevant. Notice a pattern here. And I've only mentioned a couple of things so far. The last, well, yeah, I left a link to that. Wonderful. So let's look at the others. The evolution trains are coming in the wrong direction. How the claimed mechanism for evolution does the wrong thing. This is by Carl Wieland and is his train story, which I've read before. The first part is, well, just a story. He then talks about evolutionary biologist Dr. Jerry Coyne of the University of Chicago and what he said in a book review. Coyne deplores the fact that the book's examples will probably not change the minds of creationist advocates who have already accepted such changes as adaptation within a species. Variation within a kind would have been more precise. He says that creationists argue that such small changes cannot explain the evolution of new groups of plants and animals, and goes on to say, this argument defies common sense. When, after a Christmas visit, we, presumably his family in Chicago, watch Grandma leave on the train to Miami, we assume that the rest of her journey will be an extrapolation of that quarter mile. Thus, says Coyne, a creationist unwilling to extrapolate from micro to macro evolution is being irrational. Now, what Coyne said makes sense to me. Whelan then goes on to say that the train analogy can be turned around because the real issue in biological change is all about what happens at the DNA level, which concerns information. The information carried on the DNA, the molecule of heredity, is like a recipe, a set of instructions for the manufacture of certain items. Well, first of all, it's not like a recipe. There's no mix ingredients. Stir, pour in a pan, and bake at 350 for 35 minutes. DNA, when placed in the right environment, replicates as the cells replicate. Then the cells differentiate. The code for all of this is in the DNA, but to look at it as a recipe is simplistic and a bad analogy. To go into this further is not in the scope of this video, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Continuing on now, he then goes on to say things like, selection on its own always gets rid of information, never the opposite. As creatures diversify, gene pools become increasingly thinned out. Remember, evolutionary belief teaches that once upon a time there were living things, but no lungs. Lungs had not evolved yet, so there was no DNA of information coding for lung manufacture. Somehow this program had to be written. New information had to arise that did not previously exist anywhere, all of which are untrue. The first two statements are ridiculous. They ignore a lot of things, including gene duplication and polyploidism, as well as all the work that has been done investigating the DNA of different populations. As for the third remark, well, that's just ridiculous as well. Lungs just didn't show up. They derived from the swim bladders of fish, so the information was already there. Carl Wieland is an MD with no specialized training or education in biology, other than, I suppose, his undergraduate studies. I don't hold that against him. Many people, myself to some extent, are self-educated. I would hope everyone continues to educate themselves. But when someone clearly doesn't understand the discipline they're talking about, the fact that they've had no education in it is glaring. I'm going to give one more example of their bad references. Under Countering Teaching of Evolution in Schools, and doesn't that title thrill us all, most of it is about the importance of defeating evolution and teaching creationism in the classroom. I guess they haven't noticed the continual string of defeats that creationism and intelligent design have had in the courts. One of the links is to Cutting Off the Air Supply of Atheism, which goes on to say, atheism is a religion, and atheists time and time again take away the religious liberty of Christians in order to promote their false religion. Evolution is the air supply of atheism. Directly confronting atheism can be useful, but the best way for Christianity to prevail against secularism is through preventative medicine. Reaching young people with the gospel and discipling them is a first step. First of all, need I say that atheism isn't a religion? Second, atheists are not trying to take away the religious liberty of Christians. No one is trying to take away the religious liberty of Christians. To say that evolution is the air supply of atheism ignores the fact that most mainstream Christian groups accept the theory of evolution. I went to Catholic school. I was taught evolution. This is false and inflammatory rhetoric that is backed with nothing. No facts, no studies, no peer-reviewed literature. So their sources are crap. So let's go back to that first question again. The best evidence points to global atheism and agnosticism shrinking in the world, while global Christianity and creationism is seeing significant growth. Theologically liberal churches are shrinking, while many theologically conservative churches are growing. Now let's look at one of their sources. Now they don't give links for each of their questions, just a link to a number of places, and you sort of have to sort through them and figure out what they're talking about. Following that one link at the top, we find Global Decline of Atheism/Agnosticism and the Rise of Christianity. When you click on that, you see a header saying, in 2012, it was reported there are 800 less atheists each day in the world. So I go to check this out. Their source is the Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. If you click on that link, you get a table that covers the years 1800 to 2025. I'm assuming they're projecting the figures for 2025, or they believe that someone in their group is psychic. At the bottom there are methodological notes. And they say in those notes where they got the data for rows 1 to 4, but nowhere is it stated where the data as to the numbers of different religions come from or how that data is collected. Just to begin with, I doubt that there was a comprehensive worldwide census in the year 1800 or a number of other years referenced. However, according to this table, global Christianity has grown from 34.5% in 1900 to 33% today. Wait, that's not a growth. That's a decline. What on earth? Now you can see I've cut and pasted here so that we can look at just the relevant data. But you can look this up for yourself. I've got tons of links below. They're all with headers so you can find the stuff I'm talking about. I also cut out all but the pertinent data so that it could be viewed easier. They don't give percentages for atheism, but they do give numbers, and the numbers show a decline from 165,506,000 in 1970 to 140,001,000 in the year 2000 to 136,642,000 today. Maybe there is a decline in atheism. Maybe some of the missing consider themselves agnostics. Agnostics are missing from this table. There's no listing for agnostics. I don't know what questions were asked in each survey, or if the questions were the same across each survey, or wherever they got the data in the first place. So I don't know if they lumped the two categories together or not. But there's certainly no increase in Christianity according to this table. Anyway, this is hardly an independent or authoritative source. More to the point, even if this is true, it has nothing to do with the theory of evolution or science. Now on to their second statement.